My name is Rob Beamer, and I'm delighted to be here today. I do have a background in finance and very excited to serve as one of the senior judges. Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself?
I am also excited to be here. My name is Lisa Laird. I work for an investment consultancy for institutions.
I'm Jason. I'm a sophomore and I'm majoring in sustainability management and marketing.
I'm Frederick. I'm a senior and I'm majoring in business administration and sustainability management.
Hi, I'm Astrid. I'm a sophomore and I'm a sustainability management major.
Nice to meet you all and welcome again. So I will proceed with the judge instructions. You have been called back by the company you gave your full presentation to for a second visit. They have asked you to speak only on the ethical aspects of the problem and to explain why your solution successfully handles any ethical issues. You will have 10 minutes. There will be no question and answer period. You may not use slides or video. You probably don't want to have more than 2 or 3 members of your team doing this. Senior judges will provide feedback after your presentation. With that, Micro Solutions Consulting, you may begin.
Thank you all for having us today. Good afternoon, Baltimore Planning Commission. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our pitch on the benefits of implementing a task force on pocket park proliferation to sprout pocket parks across Baltimore. As we discussed yesterday, the benefits of microparks are far-reaching and primarily benefit underutilized and overlooked spaces. Pocket parks promote physical activity, improve mental health, and foster community connections. Unfortunately, access to these green spaces and their benefits in Baltimore is often linked to social injustice. Wealthy communities tend to have more access to parks and larger green spaces, while lower income neighborhoods and communities of color often lack this critical resource. This lack of access perpetuates social and economic inequality and can contribute to negative life outcomes in our community. By creating microparks in underutilized or overlooked spaces in Baltimore, we hope that the Baltimore Planning Commission can begin to address this inequality and promote social equity. To balance the lack of access to large green spaces that wealthier suburban neighborhoods benefit from, the Baltimore Planning Commission should aim to create more high-quality yet affordable pocket parks run by local community leaders.
The best known ethical benefit of microparks is that they promote public health. Access to green spaces has been linked to numerous health benefits. Microparks reduce stress and improve mental health through the human connection to nature. They also provide cleaner air and cleaner water, as flora filters out pollutants and prevents runoff through erosion control. The parks reduce crime by engaging youth and eliminating abandoned areas. They also reduce trash through composting and by replacing illegal dumping sites. Microparks can also produce small amounts of food to introduce fresh produce to underserved communities. And finally, access to green spaces increases the physical activity of local residents. By creating microparks in overlooked spaces, we can promote public health in the areas which lack it most. The importance of public health has been highlighted in recent years, especially as we have faced a global pandemic. Microparks can be a critical part of mitigating the effects of the health crises such as the pandemic, especially for those that are most effective because of a lack of resources or options to travel. By providing safe, accessible outdoor spaces for people to exercise and enjoy nature, microparks reduce inequities during times of crisis. Beyond public health, pocket parks promote cultural diversity. Many communities are made up of diverse cultural groups with unique customs and traditions. By creating microparks that reflect the cultural heritage of these communities, we can promote a sense of pride and belonging. This can help build stronger community connections and promote cultural understanding. This cultural diversity is a key part of any community. When communities embrace and celebrate their cultural diversity, they are more likely to be inclusive and welcoming to everyone who lives there. Particularly in Baltimore, the wide variety of its neighborhoods are a strong suit. The city has a long history of hosting different cultures, from being one of America's most important ports to accepting immigrants from Ellis Island and to hosting Afghan refugees. Further distinguishing these neighborhoods through designing microparks with themes based in traditions and customs helps increase the character of a city as a whole. In addition to human diversity, pocket parks also promote eco-diversity, and it increases the species richness and density of both flora and fauna in a city. Further, microparks promote community building. By creating microparks in underutilized or overlooked spaces, we can provide an accessible place for community members to connect and synthesize a shared goal that community members work towards together. The objective nature of microparks also works to bring together unlikely friendships. Elders and youths can easily find themselves working on or enjoying the benefits of microparks. Kids and adults can learn to tend vegetable gardens or enjoy a friendly chess match. There have even been successful cross-denominational church initiatives to support pocket parks in Baltimore, demonstrating their strong ability to bring people together. Beyond building unlikely connections, a 2010 study found that 89% of tourists consider urban greenery very important from a tourism perspective. This means that microparks can also help external community building and attract non-residents to visit the community, giving it greater visibility and increasing traffic to local businesses. These connections can be the foundation of efforts to build a thriving community. When people feel connected to their community, they are more likely to be invested in its success and well-being. By creating microparks, we build a stronger community identity. And last, but certainly not least, microparks provide opportunity for growth. By involving community members in the creation and maintenance of microparks, we can promote more democratic and participatory decision-making. When community members are involved in the decision-making process, they are more likely to feel a sense of responsibility for the outcome. We found that community members were particularly interested in taking part in discussions about parks and physical construction, and micropark discussions can easily be the entryway through which citizens become more involved in government and service efforts. This participation then leads to more sustainable and equitable outcomes for everyone involved.
Thank you, Frederick. And for the reasons that Frederick just described, we were adamant that the Baltimore Planning Commission establish a task force for pocket park proliferation. Doing so would guarantee that more pocket parks, like the success of Gwynns Falls Mighty Park that we demonstrated yesterday, can sprout across Baltimore. Vacant lots contribute to blight. By turning vacant lots to vibrant green community spots, the Baltimore Planning Commission can realize a catalyst for change against systemic issues of underinvestment and discrimination. Yes, existing programs aimed at addressing the vacant lot issue in Baltimore are in place, such as the Baltimore Green Network, which includes the Adopt a Lot program, but it has shortfalls as it guarantees the city the rights to uproot years of invested labor, materials, and social networks for tax revenue. This counteracts all good intention of empowering local communities and overlooked zip codes. Pocket parks fit right under the umbrella of the Baltimore Green Network, which aims to transform vacant properties into recreation areas, parks, trails, urban gardens, and farms. By focusing on pocket parks such as that in Gwynns Falls, we believe that the Baltimore Planning Commission will be able to realize productive and inspiring changes year after year. The recommended task force would, 1, identify community leaders to spearhead initiatives to transform vacant lots into green community hubs, thus guaranteeing community input and satisfaction with the projects and the creation of pocket parks that are tailored to the wants and needs of specific neighborhoods. 2, assist with grant securement and distribution, guaranteeing extra time for community leaders and residents to do the groundwork of creating a pocket park that they love. And 3, implement programs for lot maintenance and longevity, ensuring that pocket parks don't last for just a moment in time, but continue to evolve year after year into stronger community assets. Thank you for your time.
That was well timed. You are under 10 minutes. Obviously, there's no Q&A, and so we'll just jump right into feedback. This format is obviously quite different from yesterday. I don't have to tell you that. It's purely narrative, purely oratory, and you have to be able to, not have the visual crutch of a PowerPoint, and that can be a blessing and a curse. I think that, for all intents and purposes, you were able to champion that very well. You're trying to fit a lot into 10 minutes, and in a normal sort of conversational scenario, obviously we would prefer a slower cadence, but then again, there would also be an opportunity for transaction, between judges and speakers. So overall, nice job. I have a good sense of pocket parks now. I think you condensed your executive summary well into that 10-minute span. Obviously you have to touch on to everything. So we have legal dimensions, we have financial dimensions, and of course the ethical piece is why you're here. So being able to talk about that is huge. My piece of feedback that I would ask you to build on in the future, even in a 10-minute scenario, I don't know if this is possible in a 90-second scenario, but always be willing to quickly entertain opposite arguments. So you take the vantage point of somebody who's already going to be playing devil's advocate, already going to be a naysayer, and you answer their concern on the front end. So they're not thinking, okay, what am I going to hit them with in Q&A, or what am I unsettled with in a scenario like this where we can't ask Q&A? So get out in front of potential reasons why you wouldn't have this. And if there's absolutely no reason you can think of, then mention that, but at least tell the audience that you've entertained the consideration of playing devil's advocate. All right, I've already run my mouth for 2 minutes. Thanks. And Lisa, over to you.
So that was as good or better than many professional presentations that I've seen. Very, very well done. First of all, I absolutely love the idea. I'm a big advocate for green space, but I think this would, I think the function of being on Zoom makes it challenging, but you were able to transition effectively from one to the other. At points it felt a little bit red, but I think, again, that's a function of the technology. I think if you were in a room with a person, I like that you did like the 1, 2, there would be more kind of physical interaction and to be able to read other folks' body language. But I really, really liked it across the board. One thing that I found personally kind of amusing was the notion that these pocket parks can even bring together people of other denominations. Like somehow we wouldn't get along otherwise. I just thought that was like mildly amusing. But yeah, no, very well done. I think, yeah, that's all I have to say.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you again, Micro Solutions Consulting. Thank you. Sustainable Advisory Collective U9, you are up.
Okay, hi, I'm Erica and I'm a junior in Business Information Management.
And I'm Riley. I'm a junior finance and sport management major.
Okay. And we'll start whenever we're ready.
Yep, you have the green light.
Okay, awesome. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us back today. Myself and my colleague Riley are very excited to be talking to you, Nueva Pescanova, about your octopus farming operations. This whole project started with a conversation between me and my colleague Ash. Ash is a vegetarian and I eat octopus in my culture, and I think it's really normal. But then Ash was telling me about the stories of an octopus in England who loved the Rubik's Cube. And whenever a researcher would bring it close to her tank, she would reach out to them and then spin it. So all these behavior in octopus expressing an interest in such a normal thing make scientists feel like they might have intelligence. And moreover, octopus can feel pain. They actually pass 7 out of 8 criteria to feel pain according to the foundation of animal sentience. And because they have 9 brains, 8 of them are in each of their tentacles, they feel and experience things a little bit different than what humans normally would. But then thinking about my perspective, octopus are eaten everywhere in the world. Many countries eat octopus in Asia, in the Mediterranean, like Spain and Italy. Actually, in Spain, annually, a person can eat up to 1.3 kilograms of octopus. And last year in 2021, Spain needed to import $42.2 million worth of octopus just to satisfy the national demand. Because of this, Nueva Pescanova as a company should respect the autonomy of others to embrace the culture and continue eating octopus. Therefore, we feel like the argument of not eating octopus is not very sustainable. And if we are thinking about aquaculture as a way to produce this animal for consumption, we also need to think about the obligation that we might have to these animals. Many can think about it in 3 different ways. There are some who think about it as animals should have rights. However, we feel like rights is a human social construct, and it's very unattainable and unsustainable to impose rights upon animals, especially where there's no way to tell if they have any moral duties, and we cannot just base that on sentience alone. Moreover, we have seen a lot of legal development that is against the point of view that animals should have rights. And many of them think about the completely opposite side, animals should have no rights at all. This is also very unsustainable because the more we learn about sentience, the more we understand that animal has social construct and hierarchy. That's something that we just cannot understand. Therefore, we still have indirect duties toward them to help them act as if there's this natural behavior. So we arrive at a conclusion, a balance point we call flourishing. So what is flourishing? Flourishing, according to Aristotle, is an idea that octopus or any animal should act upon their natural behavior. They should be able to achieve the life goal and they should be able to have a good death. All of these, as an aquaculture company, you can provide to the animal that's currently in your care. We feel like flourishing is more than just a duty. It will also help you stay ahead of the regulatory curve because we have seen some legal development in the EU and specifically in Spain, the governing body of your company. We have seen that they have been basing it off of flourishing as an idea. Therefore, we feel like the whole octopus farming operation of your company should follow flourishing. And I pass it on to my colleague Riley to talk a little bit about it.
Of course, thank you. So now I'm going to talk more about the costs and benefits of sustainable practices in the octopus aquaculture industry. So octopus are being consumed at a significant rate around the world, as Erica already mentioned. In many places, overfishing has caused depletion of the wild octopus population, which would have significant downstream effects to marine food sources, as well as socioeconomic factors surrounding fishing. Aquaculture can relieve these burdens of the fishing industry, as it does not only provide benefits to marine life, but also provides protections of the social and economic systems surrounding fishing. Additionally, the sustainability you're promoting at your company will allow you to become a leader in the industry, as regulators will be forced to follow the practices that you've set into motion. Additionally, you will create a more innovative culture throughout your company in order to maintain that position at the top of the industry. Now, we've developed a set of recommendations that fit these ethical requirements that we've laid out before you, starting with putting forth your best practices. Now, this can be classified in your case as choosing the right species of octopus, maintaining sufficient conditions for captivity, and using humane butchery techniques for these octopus. For choosing the right species, it is important to choose the species of octopus best suited for aquaculture, as it follows our recommendation of flourishing. When creating the conditions for captivity, should also be creating a thriving environment for these octopus, also following the ethical duty of flourishing. When it comes to killing the octopus, it should be done in an efficient and the least painful way possible, as it is your duty to perform this task without any unnecessary harm to the octopus. Next, I'll discuss the ethical considerations surrounding our second recommendation of research and revision. Advancing your knowledge about octopus aquaculture practices through research, it will maximize the flourishing of your company as well as the industry as a whole. It's important to both continue your best practices as well as establish a revisionary system, which creates some checks and balances, assuring you're up to date with the most ethical and sustainable practices in your industry. These are important revisions to make, as you will be obligated to remain updated on research regarding octopus aquaculture to fulfill our recommendation of flourishing. You also have a duty to your customers to provide them with healthy food in an efficient manner while maintaining sustainable research and production strategies. And finally, you have a duty to the marine life to treat them with dignity and respect for the time that they are alive. Additional recommendations of ours include stakeholder engagement, which focuses on the 4 C's of commitment, communication, consultation, and corroboration, as you have a duty to these stakeholders to inform them about what you're doing. Next is conservation, as we have a duty to protect marine life when at all possible, meaning we should take steps to prevent any unnecessary overfishing, for an example. And finally, you should be advocating, as it is important to present yourself as a sustainable leader in the regulatory space, as advocating for proper regulation surrounding this industry will result in more ethical and sustainable practices long-term for everyone involved. Right now, you're a leading company in the aquaculture industry with sustainable practices to reinforce that position as a leader. But in the future, We strive for your company to be the forerunner of octopus aquaculture regulation to shape an industry that needs a guiding force right now. In conclusion, being responsive to animal needs will be a top priority for your company going forward, as it is important to recognize that the more we find out about living creatures around the world, the more we learn that sentience surrounds us in all living things. For this reason, we should be more conscientious of the fact that sentience is a human concept, so we should employ the flourishing mindset as a best practice, providing a sustainable future for all living things. These are all ethical steps that will help you stay ahead of the regulatory curve and stave off any potential ban in octopus farming that may come. Additionally, these steps are all financially viable. We're currently a leader in the octopus aquaculture industry, as I've mentioned, and we propose that the best way to maintain that position is to remain vigilant in your practices while developing innovative solutions to any future challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that fine overview. And yeah, Sustainable Advisory Collective. I think you did a nice job. I think, in a situation like this where we're addressing a specific issue within a larger issue, you could argue overfishing or treatment of marine mammals in general due to the decline of certain species is a global catastrophe. Depending on your vantage point. We are honed in on one example here. And as board members of Nueva Pesca Nova, trying to make a step in the right direction for octopuses specifically, just being able to lay that out very quickly for us and say, look, you're going to have an advantage in your competitive landscape because your competitors aren't doing this. It's the ethically right thing to do because we know that they're very sentient beings. Everybody's seen Finding Dory. Very intelligent, octopuses are. And financially, it's going to improve shareholder value. Pack a punch with those things. Things that we can take away with us and that really drive a point home. Because I think you filled a lot of the 10-minute space with some good information, but you got to have that kind of 30-second elevator speech at the end to take, so we have some tangible things to take away from this.
So Rob and I had the benefit of seeing the 25-minute presentation of this one yesterday. And what I loved is that some of the feedback that you got from that is make it personal or that someone asked you in the Q&A, like, well, why did you pick this issue? And I love that you brought that to the forefront of this conversation because it immediately connected us to you. And Erica, you brought this really great energy and you created a lot of enthusiasm for why take action. And then Riley, you did just such an excellent job of following that up with, well, this is what you need to do. Like now that you're really interested, this is what specifically we're going to ask you to do. And I really thought that went just beautifully. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Nice job. Moving on to our next group. We have the Sustainiquality Consulting Group, U8.
Hi, everybody. My name is Javeriana. I am a senior in business management and social communications.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriela Nieto, and I'm studying a double program of business administration and design.
Good morning. My name is Daniela Cure. I am a business administration student, and I am part of the group of Sustainiquality Consulting.
Hi, my name is Marco Picciotti, and I'm also studying business and part of this team.
Well, good morning. Welcome to this meeting in which we will be discussing the ethical implications related to the problem of income inequality in the agricultural sector in Colombia. Today, we are joined by Gabriela Lipnitsky, Gabriela Nieto, and myself, Daniela Cure. As we know, Latin America has been characterized for many years by being a highly unequal region, especially Colombia, despite the fact that it is a country very diverse in terms of climate, flora, and fauna, and that the economy has been based mainly in the production of raw material. Those who are part of the agricultural sector are among those who receive the lowest income. So the income of farmers in some areas of the country and for some specific products are below the minimum wage. That is a sum determined by the government each year. This tells us that not only the differences between the richest and the poorest proportion have intensified, but also the difference in income between those who live in cities and those who live in the rural areas. This income inequality can be explained by the following 4 factors. First, the change in farmers' production to international trade, latifundiums, that are the concentration of land, commercialization model, and labor informality. Now we continue with Gabriela, who is going to give us more context of this problem in Colombia.
Well, taking into account what Daniela just said, it is important to mention that 99.6% of Colombia's territory is constituted by rural areas. With this being said, it's ironical that poverty concentration of the country lies mainly in the countryside. With this being said, it's also important to recall that agriculture constitutes the main source of income for the people that live in the country areas, and that it actually makes up to 20% of Colombia's employment. The problem with this is that companies are actually growing at the expense of farmers because of unfair competition, lack of training, and lack of structure. With this being said, ethical work today should focus mainly in guaranteeing the well-being of people, which support, at the end of the day, their growth. With this being said, we will be talking about 4 ethical implications that surround our problem. The first one would be income inequality. So when we talk about income inequality, we can see that in Colombia, there is a main issue that it's called distributive justice. This happens because of the differentiated state's presence that leads basically to uneven distribution of resources, opportunities, and basic rights in Colombia. This has been tried to be solved by applying different social programs, but they have not worked throughout the years because of factors such as corruption, bureaucratic inefficiencies, and also political polarization. Also, we can talk about poverty, which is basically the result of inequality and political instability in the country, which has basically limited access to services, lack of education, and job opportunities. With this being said, the minimum wage in the countryside is not even respected, and people earn below the minimum wage. They don't have pension plans or any social security. And also, there's a big learning gap that reinforces the poverty cycle in the country at the end of the day. We can also talk about social exclusion, and we talk about discriminatory practices and deficiencies in the state structure to actually guarantee citizens minimum vital survival, as well as violence. Colombia has been under a 60-year-long internal conflict, which has violated human rights and is an indication of ethical failure from the government, especially in order to protect people and their citizens. Our second ethical issue is the change in small farmer production. And with the problem of violence in the country, one of the main issues here relies on the displacement of rural communities. Colombia is actually the second country with the highest number of internally displaced people in the world, with a total of 6.5 people that have been displaced from their houses and their area to the main cities. And 87% of these people actually live in rural areas. As well, we can talk about exploitation of labor. Most of the times, these people are working under informality, which happens because they're often linked to corruption and illegal activities. We can also talk about land concentration and land ownership, and this represents a historical weakness of the country in protecting and defining property rights, which has facilitated land grabbing through illegal land appropriation and violence. And lastly, we can talk about environmental degradation. So the change in farmers' production to harvesting illicit crops has affected the countryside, also by the using of agrochemicals that have led to deforestation, soil degradation, water pollution, and the loss of biodiversity. I'll hand the presentation over to Gabriela, who will talk about 2 more ethical issues.
The theoretical issue that we have is latifundium. The issue of latifundium in Colombia refers to the concentration of land ownership in the hands of a small number of individuals or groups. From an ethical perspective, it is important to ask whether the current distribution of land in Colombia is just. It is fair that a small group of wealthy individuals and corporations control so much of the country's cultivable land, while many rural communities are left without access. Complementing what was mentioned before, the issue of latifundum in Colombia raises significant ethical concerns around the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a small group of individuals and corporations, this leading to high levels of inequality and poverty, as well as social unrest and conflict. Also, by allowing a small group of individuals or corporations to control the majority of the resources, it is possible for these actors to employ disproportionate influence over political decision-making. In addition to this limits the autonomy of individuals or communities. Also, we have the lack of economic development in these regions as a result of the limited access that small farmers and other rural communities have to land. This prevents them from fully participating in the country's agricultural sector. The last ethical problem that we have is commercialization model. This model raises a range of ethical considerations related to the treatment of small-scale farmers, their communities, and their environment. In the first place, we have the value chain in agriculture. This has raised significant ethical concerns around the principle of fairness, social justice, and transparency. This involves a complex network of producers, processors, distributors, retailers, and wholesalers, and has been characterized by unequal power relationships, exploitation of small farmers, and lack of transparency. One of the main ethical concerns related to the value chain of agriculture in Colombia is the unequal distribution of benefits all along the chain. This, as was mentioned before, large corporations often have significant deals in terms of power, and this creates an unequal distribution of wealth and power and reinforces patterns of inequality and poverty. Also, the exploitation of agricultural products over the development of the local industry in Colombia raises a number of ethical concerns related to the principle of justice, fairness, and sustainability. Lastly, we also found out that there are several potential ethical issues related to the sale prices in agriculture in Colombia. One major concern is the exploitation of small-scale farmers and workers who may not have the power to negotiate fair prices for the crops of labor, explained by the issue before. Gabriela is going to explain the conclusions of this.
Well, with this taken into account, we can say that the company's role mainly lies in 4 different points. So when it comes to ethical values, the company can reduce income inequality by practicing fair labor practices and giving better living wages to the people that work with them. Also promoting diversity and inclusion, which would reduce the economic disparities in the country, as well as support policies and initiatives that address income inequality. Also, it is important for the company to address sustainability problems by giving a more equitable commercialization model and sustainable business that actually protect the environment and support long-term economic growth. On third place, the company can focus on making a positive social impact that would actually support communities and their development through job training and educational programs. Lastly, we can say that the company can also do different alliances with governments, civil society organizations, businesses, and individuals in order to work together towards the same goal. Since one of the problems that we are facing is that there's no collaboration and collective action towards solving the main problem. Thank you very much.
Very much enjoyed hearing that. I'm actually going to turn it over to Lisa to start and give the first comments because I have been monopolizing that opportunity.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks very much for your team for giving us that really informative presentation. You did a wonderful job of setting up the problem and explaining why it's a problem, but it was about 80% of the time until you got to the last part of like, okay, this is what we want you to do about it. So I found myself kind of wondering like, well, what, like, yes, this is a problem, exploitation of workers and et cetera, but how can we help kind of thing. And then Gabriela Lipinski, one of the things that I noticed is that when you are struggling for the next word, and I just did it moments ago as I was talking to you, you look up. And we all do it. And like I said, I did it like 30 seconds ago. But it makes people think that you are kind of struggling for what that next word is. So do your best to kind of just continue to look at the folks in the camera would be but I think it's a really, you made a very compelling case to how to help people in rural areas And so I very much appreciate the work that went into this. Thank you.
I agree. Yeah, it was, obviously well rehearsed, a lot of really good facts in there. At the end of the day, we are the Malva Selva management team. And as I told the previous group, just some very tangible, palatable takeaways. Just hit us over the head like we're dummies and say, hey, these are things that we really recommend for you. Ultimately, to be more competitive in your landscape, to return your shareholder value, and to do the ethically right thing. Again, you painted a great picture of the problem, so I'm sure the 25-minute presentation was knock your socks off good. But as we condense it down, and as you give your 90-second presentation later, really think about how you can just drive those simple points home for the audience. And again, I want to pay respect to the fact that I speak English, and I'm speaking in English now, and I struggle for words. If I were speaking in Spanish, which is my second language, I would do it much, much more. So a debt of respect, as you toggle different linguistic frontiers as well. So overall, great job. Thanks so much. We will move now to our next team, Union Consulting Group.
So thank you so much for having us once again. I'm Parikshit Roy Chaudhary. I'm an econ and political science major.
Hi, I'm Priyanka Gupta and I'm an econ major.
And we just wanted to check if both of us are audible as well, because like our first presentation is still using
the same mic. So we're audible, both of us? Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us once again. At the very outset, I would like to outline the regions and the problems we are going to be discussing today. At the first instance, we're going to talk about the political donations Coca-Cola has had in Colombia. We're going to move on to the Philippines and the job safety of the workers in the country under Coca-Cola. We're then going to look at child safety and child safety rights in Mexico, and finally look at child labor in El Salvador. So starting with Colombia, let us understand the Human Rights Watch reports that have come very frequently over the last couple of years about protests and civil rights being violated by the government itself. It's a conflict-ridden country in some ways, but at the very outset, we need to understand that in some instances, Coca-Cola has been making political donations to many of the people in the government and many of the powerful people in the country. While this is not to do with a very specific agenda, it is a reality of the business itself. You need to have people in political power to be supporting your cause as a large multinational corporation in a developing country. And it's important that under the review system that we developed, to include the voices of observers like the Human Rights Watch, as we had argued in our 25-minute presentation, that these things are happening on the ground, and the political donations that go in such countries have to be accounted for and to see what the actual result is. We do not want to be violating civil and political rights of not just the workers, but the community in general when we are going in as a large MNC into a developing space. Moving on, we'll talk about the job safety rights that are occurring in the Philippines.
In Philippines, as we discussed, the problem started when the government in 2018 imposed a tax on Coca-Cola produced using corn syrup. This led to lower sales due to the high tax imposition, which forced Coca-Cola to lay off thousands of workers in factories and bottling plants. Now, they said that this is only the first wave and more will be issued termination papers soon, indicating that those working in bottling plants will be affected as well. Earlier this February, they announced that they will be downsizing their workforce due to an organizational structure assessment. This decision also came after the tax reform. But the workers are saying that the implementation of the trade law is a facade for union busting despite the lack of evidence of a decline in sales due to the tax on sugary and sweet beverages. One of the workers said that this is an injustice on the part of the management because there was no proper consultation with the unions. No transparent reasons were provided. They only told the workers that they were changing business models and that they were laid off, were redundant employees. From a development perspective, the Philippines allowed MNCs like Coke to enter the country with the idea that they will bring jobs to the country. Hence, We have an ethical obligation to ensure the job security of these workers and not lay them off at the first instance. This is considering the fact that Coke has made a significant recovery since 2018 and is expected to have a higher revenue due to our solution approach regarding smaller packaging and a growing focus on hydration brands and other brands which require less or no sugar, thus offsetting their cost of manufacturing and therefore bouncing back in terms of sales. Therefore, they have an ethical responsibility to not lay off employees on very short notices without an accurate reason and without any incentives or benefits. Now we will touch upon the issue in Mexico about child safety on sugar plantations.
Now, let's understand what's happening in Mexico. A large part is child labor in sugar plantations, but a significant other part of child labor that's being employed in Mexico is in the garbage dumps. These are garbage dumps that are filled with Coca-Cola plastic bottles. From an ethical standpoint, of course, having garbage dumps in plastic bottles is not the most sustainable future that Coke is trying to work towards. But on the other side, a lot of these garbage dumps are places where children are going, facing landslides and dying. In some situations, you also have them exposure to toxins that are there in these garbage dumps. But it begs the question, why are they even there? It's mainly because they're scavenging for different things in these garbage dumps. And there have been reports that it is very hazardous for these children. They are being pushed into these situations because of the poverty in these communities. And it's important that Coke realizes that their unsustainability of using plastic bottles and dumping them into grounds is causing these child safety issues. So it's important that even in terms of what the investors and the share owners of Coke want, that they want to move towards a situation where everyone's safe within the workspace and safe in the implications of what happens in their presence in a country. At the same time, the shareholders have been asking for more transparency in these operations. And this is what Coke has to look at. Because at the end of the day, we do not want your implications not only be environmentally unsustainable, but also risk children in these communities. At the very outset, let's also lay out the fact that there is a lot of sugar plantation-based child labor that's happening in Mexico, which we will also cover in the El Salvadorian context as of now.
Coca-Cola uses Salvadoran sugar for domestic consumption. The company's local bottler purchases sugar refined at El Salvador's largest mill, Central El Zaco. At least 4 of the plantations that supply sugarcane regularly use child labor. Medical care is often not available on the plantations, and children must frequently pay for the cost of their own medical treatment. They're not reimbursed by their employers, despite a provision in the Salvadoran labor code that makes employers responsible for medical expenses resulting from on-the-job injuries. Coca-Cola itself has a code of conduct for its suppliers, known as the Guiding Principles for Suppliers to the Coca-Cola Company, but it is narrowly drawn to cover only direct suppliers, which includes sugar mills but excludes plantations. The Coca-Cola Company's direct suppliers will not use child labor as defined by the local law, but they do not address the responsibility of direct suppliers to ensure that their own suppliers from the plantations do not use hazardous child labor. In addition, children who work on sugarcane plantations often miss out on the first several weeks of or months of schooling. For example, they do not attend schools during harvest seasons, and others drop out of school altogether. If we are serious about avoiding complicity in the use of hazardous child labor, the company should recognize that its responsibility to ensure that respect for human rights extends beyond its direct suppliers, including healthcare facilities and education for child laborers, as we discussed in our solution approach. Our solution of importing corn syrup from the Philippines will add additional financial support for the firm to incentivize sugar mills to prevent employing child labor. It addresses the problem of looking over the conditions of child laborers on sugar plantations and holds all the stakeholders accountable for their actions.
So to conclude, let us understand what is Coke's position in these countries. Because Coke, when they enter these countries, it usually happened around the 1990s with WTO regulations coming in and these countries liberalizing and allowing such companies to come in. They are entering therefore into a social contract with the society itself, where they need to be working towards the development of these communities, because these are gigantic companies for Coke to be operating in these countries. It's not like the North or the Western Hemisphere, where you have a number of these companies who operate in the same space. So it's important that development is a core important factor in the decisions that Coke makes. And it's only in the benefit of Coke's interests, because that avoids conflicts in these countries, that's avoiding your political and civil rights violations in these countries, is gaining more support for the company within these countries itself, and it looks better in the view of their own shareholders. It's an obligation that's coming through an intricate balance of both profit and progress, both of which need to be introduced. But that begs the question, are there further benefits for Coke in this space, which is what we'll cover next.
Addressing that concern that also came up in our feedback session as to handling the cost of manufacturing or handling the cost of incentivizing mills or eradicating child labor, I think it presents a trade-off to Coca-Cola as to whether they prioritize their profits more or to address this ethical issue. But however, in our solution approach, we neutralize both the impacts and provide a win-win situation for Coca-Cola to address the ethical implications of providing a voice to the workers and a seat at the table to negotiate their policies, and at the same time working towards the safety of child laborers, and at the same time not undermining their profits or their financial health. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Lisa, do you want to start us again?
Sure. I think you guys have a future as civil rights advocates. You both spoke with a lot of energy, and you're emphatic, like you need to do these things. And I would just ask that you put some of that a little farther forward in the presentation, because I did find myself again kind of wondering, okay, like all these problems, what do I have to do about it? Also, you know, you are speaking to, we're pretending to be the Coke board of directors, but instead of saying there, it's you. And it'll land hard, and it might not land because of the way that you have a lot of energy. You know, it may not always be received well, but sometimes it will be. And I think because I wouldn't change how you're doing it all, but I would just know that, you know, it's, you don't go so far as to be accusatory, but you do make it seem like somebody, you have to do something, and this is why. And I think that when it's effective, it will be incredibly effective. And I think what I got out of that was you want Coke to treat people fairly, protect children, and be sure that the environmental impact is as light as possible. And I would kind of just bring those, you know, right up front. Yeah. But thank you. I thought it was great.
Yeah, Lisa made some really good points there. You know, we talk about the consultant's dilemma. How do you try to appease senior leadership in a company, at the same time be very critical where you need to be, because that's why they've hired you. They didn't hire you just to tell them there's nothing wrong, right? They hired you to identify opportunities, strengths, weaknesses, and threats. So, you know, how do you carry that narrative with your tone, and then obviously with your talking points? And so that's really what the best teams in this competition will think about, and how they go to the next level and really carry out their role. You know, it's as much an enterprise of role playing as it is research, and there's heavy duty research that accompanies this. It's clear you did your homework. You know, you both, I was very impressed with just the elements of statistics and you know, as a member of Coca-Cola's board of directors, I feel like I do need to make changes where I can right now, because it's front center that child labor is it's problematic. So anyway, you carried the narrative well. Don't have a lot more to add other than what Lisa said and what I've already said. So thank you. U19 AquaClean, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, and then I will proceed with the instructions and we can get started.
I'm under major of marketing, and I'm with Mauricio and Eduardo. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for taking the time to join us today to discuss an important issue that affects us all, the contamination of the Endo Dam in Hidalgo. My name is Pablo Pedrosa, and with my partner Mauricio Gomez, we're going to explain the health issues that the contaminants of the Endo Dam are causing in the nearby communities of the dam. And we're also going to explain the solution that we think is the best for the community and the health of everyone.
The Endo Dam is a vital source of water of many communities in Hidalgo, including Tulancingo. However, it's currently being contaminated by the various pollutants, which poses a serious health risk to the people who rely on this water source. In addition to the health implication, there are also significant financial implications of this problem. The contamination of the Endo Dam is not only a health hazard, but also a significant financial burden on the community. We need the government or some entrepreneurs to invest 3 million pesos to we can run the project and make this successful. The contaminated water supply affects the local economy as people become sick and unable to work, leading to a decrease in productivity and income. The costs associated with medical treatment and lost wages can also be substantial for both individuals and the community as a whole. The contamination of the Endo Dam increased the cost of providing clean drinking water to affected communities. The government and local authorities are forced to invest in expensive water treatment technologies to remove the pollutants, which raises the cost of delivering clean water to the public. This, in turn, can lead to higher water bill for households and business, which places a strain on their finances.
Well, the pollution of the Endo Dam can also have a negative impact on the local economy. If the water is not safe for the human consumption, business that rely on clean water, such as agriculture and tourism, will suffer. So this can be lead to job losses and reduce economic activity in the affected areas. Another solution could be to impose fines on companies that discharge pollutants into the water. By doing so, companies will be incentivized to reduce their waste and adopt more sustainable practices. The revenue generated from the fines could be used to fund environmental conservation efforts or up to upgrade the infrastructure used to treat the water. It is important to note that implementing such solutions may not be affordable for everyone. Therefore, it may be necessary to seek financial support from the government or other organizations to cover the cost as alternatively. The cost could be spread across multiple stakeholders in the community through a tax or levy system. So there are a few potential solutions, such as investing in better waste management systems, improving the monitoring and enforcement of environmental regulations, and promoting public awareness about the importance of keeping the Endo Dam clean.
Of course, implementing these solutions come with its own financial implications. For example, investing in better waste management technologies can be expensive, and improving the monitoring and enforcement of environmental regulations requires resources and personnel. However, the cost of these solutions must be weighed against the cost of continuing to operate in a contaminated environment. To address this problem, we must take action to reduce the contamination of the Endo Dam. Solutions such as implementing stricter environmental regulations, increase public awareness about the importance of water conservation, and investing in alternative water sources can be effective in reducing contamination levels. Implementing these solutions will come with financial costs. Stricter environmental regulations may require additional resources and personnel to monitor and enforce, while investing in alternative water sources may require significant capital expenditures. However, the cost of not taking action will be even greater in terms of lost productivity, medical costs, and long-term economic decline.
Okay, well, the ethical problem we're fighting is that drinking polluted water can have serious negative consequences on your kidneys and other organs in your body. The kidneys are responsible for filtering waste and toxins from the blood. So if the water you drink is contaminated with harmful substances, it can put extra strain on your kidneys and increase your risk of kidneys and damage or diseases. Pesticides and herbicides used in agriculture and industry can also contaminate water sources and affect kidney health. These chemicals can cause oxidative stress in the kidneys, which can damage the delicate structures that filter waste from the blood. Over time, this can lead to kidney dysfunction and disease. Industrial chemicals such as solvents and cleaning agents can also contaminate water and pose a risk to kidneys health. Exposure to these chemicals has been linked to the kidney damage and disease. Finally, polluted water can also contaminate harmful bacteria and viruses that can cause infections and damage in the kidneys. Examples of waterborne pathogens that can affect the kidneys include coli and other bacteria, as well as viruses like hepatitis A and norovirus. The ethical benefits of avoiding polluted water are numerous and significant. First and foremost, choosing to drink clean water and safe water helps to protect the health and well-being of individuals as well as the broader community. By avoiding polluted water, we can reduce our risk of kidney damage and disease, as well as the other health problems that can result from exposure contaminants. Secondly, by choosing to drink clean water, safe water, we can help to reduce the overall burden on our healthcare system. Kidney disease and other health problems that result from exposure to polluted water can be expensive to treat and can place a significant strain on healthcare resources. By taking steps to prevent these conditions from occurring in the first place, we can help to reduce overall demand of healthcare. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and start. I think, again, it's clear you've done a ton of research here and you have some really compelling statistics. I think that similar to some of the groups we've heard, I would just recommend that you really try to pack a punch with your core recommendations and what you're driving at in terms of short, mid, and long-term action for the local management unit and the community leaders of the city of Tipatitlan and Tula de Allende. So, we have a good sense of what it is that the call to action is and how that's going to be taken. It sounds, all the stakeholders, that obviously the people are the key stakeholders, and with their interests at heart, their health interests, their long-term blood and kidney functioning. And these are very important issues that everybody can relate to at some level. So again, just simplifying that messaging to kind of some key takeaways would be helpful. But overall, like I said, it's clear you did a ton of research here, and you've put in some really good statistics and background here for the board to consider for this very important issue of clean water.
I really liked the flow of this presentation. Pablo, you started off by saying, we're going to tell you what the problem is, and then we're going to tell you what we want you to do to fix it. You didn't tell us what those things were. You just kind of gave us a guide to how things were going to go. And then Mauricio, you said, well, this is what the problem is. And then it goes back to Pablo that says, well, this is how you fix it. And then Mauricio, you said, these are the potential challenges that you could come up with to this, but you have an ethical obligation. And then Pablo, you dug deep on the ethical obligation is health. And so I liked the fact that it was the back and forth. I liked the fact that you gave me a guide as to what you were going to say. And so I knew to expect, when the call to action would come. And then you really doubled down on the ethics piece. So thank you.
Thank you all for coming and being part of this collective experience. I felt the camaraderie was there, and I enjoy this format very much because we're not so siloed in. We get some cross exposure and pollination and so forth. And that's all I have. Thanks again.